Welcome back. This is the Alchemist Nation podcast. We interview real estate investors all across the country. It's a real estate podcast designed towards helping you get yourself financially set for life. Real estate is an asset that we've chosen, and it works really well. One of the three assets there is stocks, real estate, and owning a business. And of all of them, real estate seems to be the one that lasts the longest and is the easiest to get into with just a couple of real good principles. I'm here with my good friend, Rick Cohn, who's somebody I've looked up to for a long time. He has run one of the oldest real estate investor associations in New England. I believe it's over 11 years. You've been running the Rhode Island REREG. Is that right, Rick?
Well, I began it in 2003, so we'll have to do math a little bit later.
Wow. So 17 years. So Rick, you've been a big inspiration to not just me, but hundreds, probably thousands of other investors. But you've definitely had an impact on me and some of the other people who've really become successful in Rhode Island and Massachusetts and Connecticut. Regardless of where they ended up, we've all kind of started around your group and your meetup, which has always been based on education and like just being able to put people first. How did you get started in real estate investing? Before we get into the groups you've been running, how did you get started in investing yourself?
Well, that's a real interesting question. And I was thinking about that not too long ago. And one of the things that came up for me is that there's almost an entrepreneurial drive in so many people who get into this field. In fact, I'd be interested if you have a similar experience. I mean, I remember in 8th grade selling gum to the other kids in class. I remember saving money from my summer jobs to buy stocks. And I remember being 12 years old, and my father, who owned a house at the time, was explaining to me that there was a mortgage on the house, but within 15 years, that mortgage would be fully paid off. And I thought to myself, wow, that's amazing. You mean you're going to own this thing and it'll be worth $30,000 at the time. So I've always had that experience of that interest in business. In 1978, I got a job at the Newport Navy base. It paid me enough money that I had some money left over, and I purchased my first 4-unit apartment house in 1978.
Wow. So you bought a 4-unit right up front. You worked for the Navy, and where was it? What city was it located in?
That was right in Newport, Rhode Island.
Oh, wow.
And for the listeners who don't know, that's considered the place to be now. But when I was there in 1978, the Navy had just actually moved their ships out to Virginia. It was a depressed area. It had the second highest or the third highest rate of low-income housing in the state of Rhode Island. You could buy a mansion for $50,000. Now they're selling for, millions.
Millions.
So I look back and I think that's amazing. So, but that is where I got started, right there in Newport, Rhode Island.
That's amazing. What a great story. So you were a hustler. You were always looking to find money, find ways to add value, right? You weren't looking to chip anybody. You've had candy. You said, look, I'll sell it for more than I bought it for. You're running a little business. So your father gave you that information about equity. You went and did a 4-family. Did you do this by yourself? Go and buy the 4-family by yourself? Did you have a spouse at the time? And if so, how did you convince them, or how did you convince your friends that it was okay for you to go buy a 4-family as your first property?
Yes. Well, it turns out that we all go through different eras. Back then, you were able to buy a property, you could get a first mortgage on it, and the seller was allowed to give a second mortgage. And that was a very common practice. So I think I bought the thing for 5% down. The interesting thing was that back then interest rates were about 14, 15%. So
Wow.
it is, who would have imagined, people talk about 3% now. So anyway, so I got, and at 14%, I thought I was getting a pretty good rate. So no, I didn't require any partners at the time. It was very nominal down payment, and away I went. I did partner with my sister on my second property, which was a 3-family, and that was, I don't know, 3 years later.
Well, that was my next question, is how long between the next property, and how did you manage to come up with the down payment? And you partnered with your sister. Was it again in Newport?
Yes. One of the interesting lessons I learned from those days was one of focusing. I began to become very interested in certain types of property. I call them monsters. I was interested in 8 unit or larger apartment buildings. We call them apartment buildings. Of course, they were all these converted Victorians that had used to been used to house sailors. And so I began to focus on those multifamilies from 8 to 15 unit. And one of the strengths I had was because I was focusing, the realtors in the area knew what I was looking for. I knew where you could get financing. I knew what rents were going for. There was probably maybe 50 of these in my area altogether. I knew who owned them, who bought them. I remember one cold February morning driving by an 8 unit apartment house that was on my list. I saw that the window was open in one of the apartments. I thought to myself, I bet you the landlord's paying the heat, and I bet you it's a very unhappy landlord. I called the landlord up, and sure enough, he was willing to sell me the property. And the point of all this is that I had the confidence from specializing, from focusing on these types of properties, that I was able to move forward and move forward with confidence.
I love that. So basically, by focusing and not being distracted, because Rhode Island, we may make fun of as the smallest state. It's a big state. There is a lot of properties, a lot of cities, and even within Newport, there's a lot of properties, a lot of different things you could have jumped into. But you jumped into your monsters, as you call them, the monster
Yes.
properties, these converted Victorians,
Yes.
and you got really good at identifying what they were and the problems that those landlords would have. So catching that window being open, many people probably would have thought nothing of it, but because you had a relationship or working on building a relationship with that landlord, you're capitalizing on your focused niche, just really building good relationships. So
Yeah.
Rick, what was it that got you driven towards those monsters or towards that niche when other people maybe would have jumped into single families or townhouses or condos or something smaller?
That's a great question. I don't really know the answer why I chose that particular opportunity, except, it would impress your friends, I suppose.
We do it for ego sometimes, right? It all comes down to something external in real estate investing. So how
But let
long?
me just, before you ask the next question, you did
Sure.
raise a great point, which was, the fact that I noticed that open window. It's one of those phenomena where you buy a Cadillac SUV, and all of a sudden you start noticing all the Cadillac SUVs. I noticed back then, and even now, when I drive by a property with an unmowed lawn, it catches my eye, and you might be the same way.
Yeah.
And boarded up houses or whatever. It's just you tuck it away, and that became one of my strengths. It was a focus. You're absolutely right.
So what you focus on expands. The part in the brain is called the reticular activator. The more you're looking for something, the more suddenly it's everywhere. And you just built yourself this really good system of this is what I'm looking for. This is what I want. These are the problems that these landlords would suffer or face. And then you saw everything through their eyes. And so you were just looking to service them and get them out of their properties that you knew you could turn around and do better with. Is that fair
Yes.
to say?
Well, it makes me sound more altruistic than my approach. My approach at the time was just to grab these things, and to make some money on them. But yeah, exactly. So it did allow me. The more important thing is not so much, which would have been a great idea, of putting myself into the shoes of the owners. Was it simply people knew what I was looking for, and that focus really gave me confidence, which I think is a challenge faced by a lot of real estate investors, particularly today. It's the price is so high, and there's such concerns that I think when you focus, it allows you a greater confidence to move forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's some phenomenal advice, Rick. So you're a trainer now at this point. What was the transition, right? So I know, and I've met you, and I've seen you for years now, and you definitely do it from a genuine place. And you've built yourself some wealth. You built yourself some knowledge and some awareness. And obviously, there's been some bumps along the road. Not every deal you did was amazing. What was it that made you shift over? Because you invest still, but you invest more cautiously. You invest maybe not as aggressively as you. So you're not swinging the hammer yourself. You're not out there
Right.
doing a lot of the work, and your investments tend to be more on the paper side now. From the last conversation we had together,
Yes.
what was the transition? Where at what point did you hit a line and say, you know what, this is what I'm building, this monster empire of monster houses in Newport, and I'm
Yes.
building and expanding. Where was it that you said, okay, I've had enough of this particular type of asset, and you made a shift over?
That's an interesting question. Um, it always had been my ambition to have enough money so that I could choose to work or not. And of course, I'm dating myself here by but by 1986, I had 36 units and 6 buildings. The property that I described to you with the landlord, he had provide seller financing. I had turned around and resold that to somebody else and carried the mortgage. And that allowed me to quit my job and go full time. Uh, Now, that is actually related to something that a lot of people face right now, because now I was ready to jump into it with both boots and nothing made sense. Every deal I was looking at, the prices were so high, this again, 1986, 87, which is the equivalent of what we're going through right now. It's like, wow, this just, when you make the rents and the price, it just doesn't make sense. I actually started coasting for a couple of years, looking for deals. And that actually led me to begin teaching real estate, teaching people how to get their license. So I became a pre-licensed instructor,
Oh, wow.
and that opened up 2 opportunities for me. The first was that I enjoyed the heck out of teaching. And you may have heard this expression, which is the best student in the room is the teacher. I learned so much information from teaching and the mistakes and the things that I didn't know. It led me down paths. So, for example, I became interested in a discussion came up of what happens when property taxes aren't paid. And I did some research and learned about tax liens and began investing in tax liens. Um, so that became a focus for me. I became very interested in mortgages and notes, and what you could do with that, and seller financing. And I went down the road of buying mortgages. So these were all niches that were almost intellectual. They didn't have to do with tenants and toilets. But they really appealed to me. So about 1990, I went down this path. The first was I enjoyed the heck out of sharing what I knew, and goodness knows I had a lot to learn. But some of the things I learned opened up my eyes to all of the possibilities in real estate.
I love that. That is a detailed and like just a real path that anybody could take, but with lessons, right? The person who is teaching is the biggest learner. The person who's learning the most is the one who's teaching. And you've built kind of this, okay, the market doesn't work anymore for me, but now I've got all this free time. What
Right.
am I going to do?
Yes.
How do I go and teach people something that I have a lot of knowledge about until you called it coasting, but maybe you're building a little bit more knowledge and the deals weren't there. So you're shifting over to the point where you could be ready for the deals when they were ready, or when they
Yes.
were available, and you built yourself a strong network. All those real estate agents, who are they going to go to once the deals did start showing up again? The person who trained them.
Yes, that's a very good point. That's a very
and
good
then
point.
and then you expand your knowledge in the notes, in tax liens, in other assets that didn't involve so much of swinging the hammer. How did you get pulled into that direction? Was it, do you think, market, or was it just your natural tendency towards investments that were more sophisticated, more knowledge based, as opposed to being so physically based?
Um, well, that's right on target. And I think what it boils down to, and if my son were to say to me he was interested in real estate, I would look at or ask him, well, what are your strengths? I don't like tenants that much. I hope none of them are going to be listening to this. Uh, right now, I focus on single family houses simply because they're less aggravating. But the other things that I was describing, and when you say what led me to them, it was really just my own natural tendencies. I'm not a rehabber. I know enough to do it, but I'd sooner hire that out. Uh, I manage property, but I'm not thrilled by that. But I love the intricacies of, dealing with financial instruments. So it's just a natural inclination. And that would be the same advice I'd give to beginners or to my son. I'd say, well, take a look at what you enjoy. What aspect of real estate do you think you'd enjoy? Because fortunately, there are a lot of different focuses that you can go down.
Absolutely, there are. So it's cool that you found one that you really enjoy. And the more I'm in this, I find that I like acquisition more than I like actually doing anything when it
Yes.
comes to the back side of it. The front
Uh-huh.
side's fun. Acquisition, find the deal, finance the deal. That's the cool stuff. And the other piece is I'm almost like, I'd rather just hire this out and let somebody else, pay somebody else so they can enjoy doing what they're good at, which is, making the house pretty, managing the tenants. And you found the same thing early on.
Yes.
So, Rick, this has already been a valuable conversation, just 17 minutes into it. So I'm getting to learn
17
things about,
minutes, you make the time go fast.
yeah, I'm getting to learn things about you that I've always questioned. I've always wondered because you stand in front of the stage and you're so humble and you talk about the next speaker, you give a little bit of advice, but where did Rick Cohn come from has always been in the back of my head. Where did you start? Where did you come from? And to hear that you were investing in a
I'll just share with you, I ask myself the same question.
I think every humble person has to, right? That's again another sign of humility. And for anybody who hasn't heard of Rick, he runs a Rhode Island real estate investors group in Rhode Island at the Crown Plaza Warwick Hotel. Currently on Zoom, everything is done digitally right now due to COVID. But his group is every month. It is a small charge. When you consider it to all the national RIAs, what he charges monthly is very small. But what you get in return, there's very, very few or no or little sales pitches. In fact, I think my book was the only thing that was ever sold on stage. I believe I just kind of said, it's an option. You don't have to buy it, but
Yes.
so it's a valuable group, and you've built it up over the years. And so just hearing, like thinking back of, like to think of Newport as anything less than what it is today.
Yes.
And to think of you investing there and seeing something that nobody else saw. Maybe you didn't. Maybe you just said, I just see an opportunity. I just see really good prices at cash flow. And for that to have worked out for you, like you said, maybe being a little too early, right? A little too early to the dance.
Yes.
You held on to some of those, right?
Actually, one of the funny parts is if I would have stopped with what I owned in 1986, I probably would have been fine. I've had a lot of real estate adventures along the way, bought and sold a lot of properties. Somebody once told me early on in my career, never sell. And it turns out he was right in terms of making money. So if I would have held on to everything, those 36 units, I would have been set for life. But on the other hand, I would have been a landlord, which I didn't care for that much.
100%. 100%. And that was one piece so over the years that I've known you, I've picked it out over time that you don't hold a ton of real estate physically anymore. What you hold is more paper assets. And you've got this passive income coming from really intelligent products as opposed to landlording. You found what you like in the business. And I've met other landlords who are, in their 50s and 60s who have 200 units, 300 units, 100 units, and they love the landlording process. They have an assistant who does a lot of the work for them, but they're still managing, and they're okay with that.
Yeah.
I like to think that I'm more like you, where I don't see myself doing that for the long term. And even now, I have all my property management outsourced. It's managed by somebody else, and I'm okay with paying her. And I love that she is okay with taking the paycheck, right? And all the headaches.
Yeah. Good. And I guess the secret is managing the manager.
Manage the manager, and it's been okay. So for your single families, do you still manage them, or do you have somebody else that does a lot of the stuff for you?
I still do it myself. Fortunately, and that's one of the things about single family, you get the right people in there. You get a good neighborhood. They send their kids to the local school. They fill the garage with all their stuff, and they stay there for 20 years. And that's my model. I only began in 2012 during the downturn. That's when I began my focus on single families. So there's been a couple of bumps along the way. I just had some tenant who's been there for 4 years, and I'd hoped they'd be there for 40 years. They were moving out. But for those who don't know, probably the biggest expense of operating rental property is turnover. It's just a killer. And so and you'll also hear, oh, buy multis as opposed to single families because you have a better cash flow. And that's also true, but you also have more turnover. So that's my focus with single families. I am doing it myself. I am also experimenting. I have a good friend who's excellent with people. I'm trying to negotiate something with her where she does a little bit more because, again, I think that we all have our strengths and management is not one of mine. So I am transitioning a little bit in that area, but I am doing it myself for right now.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's there's a principle there. You're doing it to understand it because it wasn't too much of a work, but now you're getting to the point where you're thinking, you know what, I could get some of my free time back. Maybe somebody else could manage it better for me. And I like that you're also going with a woman to do it because I have discovered that they are better with people than we are. And that's maybe it's sexist on some level, but I found that my property manager, she's more analytical, she pays more attention, and her communication skills with my tenants is like, I'm a nice guy to begin with, but and you are as well, but she knows how to get them to do things that we want done.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
So it's been good so far, and I'm glad to see that you're moving in that direction again as well. So Rick, at this point, you've seen a lot, right? You've been investing since the 70s. You've seen booms, you've seen busts. You kind of mentioned, you preluded to the fact that we're in a similar economy to what you saw when you started training and teaching people. What do you think is happening right now? And I don't want you to predict the future because I know it's not possible. But if you were to take all the cards that you have held in your hand before and say, this looks similar to this looks similar to that, what do you think people should be looking for and investing in right now as far as real estate goes?
Yeah. Well, it's an excellent question and one I actually have been thinking about. Um, and I guess there's a two-part answer to it. Well, three parts. The first one is what you said, which is nobody can predict the future, but we love to hear predictions about the future. In fact, we read them daily and they influence us. Um, I think that specialization builds wealth and diversification protects wealth. For most of your listeners who maybe are starting out or they're estate builders, for them, I'd go back to the model that I began in 1978 of specializing. It doesn't have to be 8 to 15 unit. It could be actually, I got this, or I was reminded, or I saw this in you, where you focused in mixed use properties in Fall River. What a narrow niche. And you became the guy. People, if they got a mixed use property, you'd be the one that they would call. And you got to know what the zoning laws were and how to convert them. So for somebody starting out, the best way to protect yourself is, I think, specializing. The other thing to keep in mind is don't buy something if you're a landlord or if you're a long-term hold person. You've got to really understand cash flow. Most properties do not cash flow right now. So don't buy it based on, gee, the rents will go up in the future or the property values will increase. You cannot predict the future. So it has to be a solid deal right now. And this is also true for those of you who are rehabbers or flippers. The profit is there when you buy, not when you sell. You've got to make darn sure that you're getting a good price. I have friends, good friends, experienced investors that are buying right now. And it would give me a little bit of the willies to be out there actively buying and selling, but they're making money. But you got to make sure that you have enough of a margin built in. So if we get a price drop, you're covered.
Absolutely. That is some solid advice. So you think that we don't know. We don't know what the future holds. We know
That's
that
correct.
specializing is the way to build. I like the way you said that. That was actually a very powerful sentence. And if you're listening to this right now, write this down. Specializing is how you build wealth, and diversifying is how you protect wealth.
That's right. Yes. And that's actually what I'm focusing on right now because, so I have my my basket of eggs. And, I'm thinking to myself, well, if we can't predict the future, let me see where am I vulnerable, whether we get inflation, deflation, depression, stagflation, who knows? And so, I have a certain amount of cash. I'll have a certain amount in single families. I make some loans. I just sold a condominium, which was exciting because it was a tremendous feeding frenzy.
Good.
And the only reason I sold it was because it's a condominium. I was paying those monthly condo fees. I wanted to sell the property and go into a single family house where the tenant now is paying the snow removal and the yard care. And so I'm making an extra $300 a month just off that. And I think, again, I'll get a longer term tenant. So I entered the fray. That was part of my reasoning about diversifying. So I put this condominium on the market. I just sold it. And now I'm using a tax deferred exchange. Now I'm on the other side of the coin where I'm looking at single family houses to buy. So, by the way, if anybody, I'll give you my contact information later. If anybody knows a single family house in a suburban area here in Rhode Island, I got $275,000 burning a hole in my pocket. But the point of this isn't that
I love that.
that was a quick pitch. But the real point of this story is that I'm moving some things around. I do some lending, but I'm cutting back on that. So I'll have more cash because who knows what'll happen. So that's the other part of that equation. For me, it's diversification. For your younger listeners, it's specialization.
I like that. So you're at the point in your career where it's protect, protect because you have. And
Yes,
for somebody who's younger and starting off, it's got to be specialized, specialized. Don't get so distracted. So don't be in 1,000 different stocks. Don't be, buying gold and cryptocurrency and stocks and starting a business and buying real estate. Focus on one of those and do really well within that arena because you can still find deals today if you're focused enough, if you're paying attention to it.
yes,
If you're like you were doing with paying attention to the open windows and learning your niche really well.
yeah. Um, and I think what you're describing, they call that the shiny penny,
Yes.
where, oh, apartment houses. Oh, well, wait a second, mixed use, or yeah. Oh, mortgages, I'll buy notes. So again, maybe that's my predisposition. I do know people who have succeeded in having their fingers in 1,000 pies, but I'm a big believer in finding a niche. So, for example, you might have wholesalers out there or rehabbers. So I run this real estate investor group, and I meet a lot of people who say, I'm a wholesaler. Well, if I'm in a wholesale, why not wholesale or focus on, or I'm a rehabber, why not focus on burned houses? If you made that your specialty, then people would get to know that that's what you're looking for, and they would turn to you, and you would have information that other people did not have. So again, yeah, the idea of focus.
I love that. And it reminds me of a story of a guy I met. I was being a real estate agent in Bridgewater and I was selling a house. And he told me that he only buys raised ranches. He flips houses. He does, I think, 13 or 20 at the time per year.
Yes,
And he told me, he's like, I only do raised ranches.
interesting.
And I asked him why. Why do you only do raised ranches? Because there's only three configurations. Either the kitchen's on the left or the kitchen's on the right.
Yes.
And
Well, that's a great point.
we know what we do. We go in, we turn the bottom, we add a bedroom, and we make the half bath a full bath, and now we've got a 3-bed, 2-bath. And he's like, it's turn and burn. My guys know what to do. It's like they can do it with their eyes closed, same materials, same layouts.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great point. There you have it.
So specialize, Rick. Basically, what I've learned from you is so valuable just in this last 30 minutes has been huge. And what you've been giving for years, every month, every third Thursday of the month, typically at the Westport Crown Plaza, but now on Zoom. And what is the easiest way for people to get in touch with you if they do have a property, a single family for
Yeah.
sale in Rhode Island, or if they were looking to join the RIA group and get some of the free training that you guys provide and access to all the stuff on the website and the discounts and the benefits of being part of the National RIA? What's the easiest way for somebody to learn more about you and the group?
Probably simply to Google the Rhode Island Real Estate Investor Group, and we'll pop right up. Or our actual webpage is the acronym RIREIG.com, the Rhode Island Real Estate Investor Group. And also on there will be a email, contact at RIREIG.com, and that'll end up going to me. It just goes right into my inbox. So that'd be the best way to contact me. Just go on our webpage, and excuse me, thought I turned that off. So anyway, yeah, so that's the best way to get in touch with me. And we're doing 2 Zoom meetings a month. The first Thursday of each month is a beginner session, and that's free and welcome to everybody. If any of your listeners are interested, that's put on by Craig Picard, a very experienced real estate investor. And then the third Thursday is members only. And actually this coming third Thursday, I'm very excited. We'll be talking about buying subject to the mortgage, which talk about a specialty. Maybe you're familiar with that. It's a great market niche, used very little. Most people are not familiar with it, and it's an excellent example of what we've been talking about.
It's one of those niches I think will become more prevalent, maybe a year or two out. Once interest rates start going back up, people are going to want to lock into what's already existing. In fact, one of my first houses I bought subject to, almost an accident.
No kidding.
And it really worked out well because that person needed to get out of the house, but I couldn't handle a mortgage at the time. And I told her the only way I can do this is if I assume your mortgage. And she said, that's fine. I was like, you understand you're on the hook, right?
Amazing, huh?
And so that's another niche, another specialty. If there's one thing we take away from this call today, Rick, it's specialize. It's find what you're very good at. Find what you like to do in real estate. Specialize if you want to build wealth. Diversify once you have built wealth. And continue training, continue educating yourself. Learn more about Rick Cohn and the free events he's doing and the paid events. They're at www.RIREIG.com. That's Rhode Island REREG. So Rhode Island Real Estate Investors Group. And if you do have a single family home in Rhode Island that you're looking to sell on the cheap, because Rick is a smart investor, he buys low and sells high, he is able to be reached on the website. So that said, and Rick, I really do. I look up to you so much, and I appreciate you opening up and sharing your story today. So thank you so much from me and everybody else in Alchemist Nation. You have what it takes to continue and change people's lives. So thank you for what you're doing, my friend. I appreciate you.
Thank you for your kind words, Walter, and for the invitation for today.
Absolutely, brother. Cheers to your success, Rick. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Bye-bye.